What's up, everybody? Hello and welcome to episode number 285 of the VK Bros with kind of with Jason and Alex.
And kind of with Alex.
Yeah. So for audio viewers, this isn't really going to make a difference to you, apart from the sound quality might be slightly off. But for visual watchers, you may notice that I've had a bit of a facelift and maybe a little bit of Botox, which is why my face is not actually moving at all. And this is weird for me to describe because Alex can't see me either. Long story short, I'm in the middle of moving house, and half my gear is at one house and half my gear is at the other house. So you're going to be just staring at my lovely smiling face, but just focus on Alex for this episode. How are you going this week, Al?
Well, don't focus on me because I'm hungover. So I went for a steak dinner last night, which turned into having a bottle of wine there and then testing out a new cocktail bar.
Nice.
I had a cocktail bar till 11 o'clock last night. And it was fun, but
so
So
for the audience, as you can see, we no matter what happens, rain, hail, shine, moving house, horrendous hangovers, we still come to you week in, week out with the news that you want to listen to and you want to hear. So look, massive show again this week because
hold on what you just said. I was talking to a friend of mine whose wife said, I just realised I don't really know much that goes on internationally, like the important topics.
Oh, yeah.
And ask Alex what podcast I should listen to. And I'm like, our podcast.
Yeah. So, if you're watching, welcome. Lovely to have you here. Please like, share, and subscribe.
Yeah.
But yeah, so massive week again this week, guys. I have still been paying attention to things, but I've had a hectic couple of weeks myself. Obviously, attempting to move/sell a house, getting kids enrolled at new schools, and a whole bunch of other things that you need to try to remember during these periods. So it has been a bit of a hectic period, but unfortunately, the news comes to us, doesn't it, Al? The news comes to us, and as much as you think that Venezuela was such a big deal, and as much as prior to that you think that Bondi was such a big deal, well, unfortunately for us here in Australia, most of that stuff has just been superseded by these new laws that the Albanese government is going to attempt to ram through. Now, Alex, have you got a resource for any of this stuff?
I've just pulled up the actual bill itself.
Okay, cool. So, for those of you who have been paying attention, in response to the Islamic extremist attack at Bondi, the government has brought out a new exposure draft for new anti-Semitism and gun laws. Now, the reason why this is a little bit unique is because, number one, Albo is calling for an early return to Parliament just to jam these laws through. So I've been paying attention to a lot of Oz versus the Agenda. He's one of the best accounts to follow in regards to this at the moment because he is all over every single aspect of it, including the actual laws themselves as drafted, but also he's been doing amazing work. Like, shout out to him at keeping everyone informed of the positions of the different politicians leading into the vote on this bill. And the reason why that is important is because, as a resource, if your local MP is one of the people who is going to be voting for this, you can actually contact them directly to express your massive disagreement with these laws. Because these laws are truly draconian. We thought that the free speech laws they brought in last year were bad. These could potentially be 1,000,000 times worse. So, Alex, do you have an understanding of these laws as they sit?
Not really, no.
Okay.
No.
So just to give you the absolute bare bones basic version of them, because this document, I think, is it 144 pages long, Alex?
Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously it's complete. It's very extensive, but the main framework of these laws, like the gun laws, are one thing. So we're going to keep the gun laws to the side because the gun laws don't affect every single Australian. It does affect legal firearm owners. Now, the one thing that I will comment on that and say is the fact is those legal law-abiding gun owners are now potentially going to be essentially treated as criminals when they've never done anything wrong. We already had pre-existing gun laws which should have stated that gentleman never had a gun in the first place, so the pre-existing laws already failed. And on a similar vein when it comes to the speech laws, we already have protections in the law around things like hate speech and inciting violence, which should theoretically cover everything that caused Bondi in the first place, right?
Yeah. So I don't know if this is too early to bring this up, but I spoke to a friend about this yesterday, and he believes that hate speech laws need to be brought in. And I asked the question, so let's assume in your world these laws go through, okay? And now let's say they retroactively, let's say we built a time machine and we brought these laws in before Bondi. What function would have led to the halting or stopping of that event? And he said, well, you had the son was at one of the Palestine rallies, and some of the people at the rally said hateful things. They could have been arrested. And I was like, well, we have direct incitement to violence laws already.
Yeah.
And if they did say those things, why weren't those laws used? And he's like, well, they're obviously not specific enough. I'm like, well, they literally incited violence. So if you believe that it was true, then our old laws didn't work.
Yeah.
What makes you think a new law would?
I believe that you're referring to the incident at the Opera House where they were chanting "Gas the Jays."
Yeah.
Which, again, is a direct incitement to violence, which is already covered under pre-existing laws.
Now, we did nothing.
Now, one of the things that you said there is very interesting, because your friend was saying that the laws need to be more specific. These laws, the scariest part about these laws, well, there's two parts to it, but one of the scariest parts about these laws is they are completely vague. They are completely subjective, and the what's it called? The bar that your speech needs to reach to actually run afoul of these laws is extremely low. So there's a definition there which says that these are all about saying things that may incite fear in a reasonable person. So again, the most broad of terms that you could use, but the second part of this, which is so terrifying, is they're making them retroactive.
Here you go. The conduct would, in all circumstances, cause a reasonable person who is the target or a member of the targeted group to be intimidated, to fear harassment or violence, or to fear for their safety. For example, inciting anti-Semitic hatred against Jews in public place, where a reasonable member of the Jewish community would be intimidated for fear of violence. Hold on, I've just searched every time it says fear. The conduct actually results in any person feeling intimidated, fearing harassment or violence, or fearing for their safety.
So again, hold on, just before you continue, the conduct actually results in any person feeling intimidated.
Yeah.
So obviously...
This is like the entire premise of our podcast at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. These laws are written in a way where they will be applied subjectively. There will be a two-tier justice system, because at the end of the day, they will be weaponized by anyone who wants to... If you want to rub out someone from the public square, all you need to do is go, hey, they said this thing and it made me feel intimidated, or I feared for my life because they said this thing. It may not even be directed at you. But the scary...
Fear includes apprehension.
Right. So that might literally be a case of maybe there's a pro-Palestinian protest happening on the weekend, and a Jewish person who might be going, I was going to go to the shops this weekend, but now I'm apprehensive about going to the shops because of this protest occurring, therefore they would run afoul of these laws. But also, it's retrospective too. So they can actually go back, they could look at the podcast, for example. This is actually something that really concerns me about the show, because context is supposed to matter when it comes to any sort of speech-related laws. Like Alex and I, we are free speech absolutists. We believe that there's no such thing as dangerous words. There's no such thing. If someone is saying dangerous words, that's actually a good thing, because it signals something to society. Those people, if they've got really, really bad ideas, should be free to say them. So everyone in that society can go, hey, that person's probably not someone that we should be associating with. We can also discuss the ideas that they have, and we can decide as a society whether or not those ideas are acceptable. But let me give you an example on how I would, if these laws came in, on day one, I guarantee you there'll be lawsuits against either members or former members of the government. Because I can tell you right now, during the pandemic, every single politician, or not every single, but the vast majority of politicians were saying things towards anti-vaxxers like myself and Alex, which could be deemed as hateful or causing fear or intimidation into taking the vaccine. So does that mean that the jail terms for these are up to 5 years? For saying,
well, I noticed the ones from the religious sides were 7 years.
But even the religious thing too, like the whole irony of this thing, of these laws, is the way that they are written. They have specific carved out exemptions for religious preachers to literally say anything that comes in a religious text. So if you are an Islamic preacher, for example, and there are parts of the Quran that talk about how, for example, any non-Muslim should be stoned to death, that's okay, because it's directly in a religious text. So you have to think of the whole justification for these laws in the first place was an Islamic terrorist attack against the Jewish people. And yet the laws themselves actually do more to protect the hate preachers that are preaching directly from elements of the Quran than they do to anyone else. Like
it's literally doing the opposite of what it's intended
absolutely.
to do. Yeah.
Because they can literally say, this is written in my religious text.
Yeah, and is this a situation, you think, where the government has to be seen to be doing something, yet the thing that they need to do absolutely goes against their whole base, their whole left-wing ideology?
Yeah.
And therefore, the product that's going to come out of this is essentially going to be a mess because it's going to be a contradictory document.
Yeah, unfortunately, this just smacks of politics. So what's been interesting in the last few days is you've seen a bunch of Labor ministers come out and say that, so when Bondi happened, and again, Bondi should never have happened, so as a government, absolutely, we should be assessing how it happened in the first place and rectifying some things to make sure that the likelihood of it happening again is much lower. There is no such thing as zero risk. You are never going to be able to remove risk from a society. But we all know from the things we've covered on the show how many key oversights were made in the lead up to Bondi. We know the son was on a terrorism watch list in 2019 because of links to ISIS. We know that even in spite of that, the father was able to get his gun license in 2023 and purchase 6 legal firearms in 2024. We know that they went on a trip to an ISIS training hotbed in November just before they did this attack, and they still let them back inside the country. We know all these oversights happened. This legislation, honestly, the number one beneficiary of this legislation is the current government. Because the current government gets to use this legislation to directly target anyone who criticises government policy around these issues. Yeah. So it even says in there, you could run afoul of these laws for saying things such as, you are against mass migration.
I'll see if I can find that.
Right? That is something that would be covered under these laws. Because if you were a migrant in this country, a reasonable migrant might say, well, I feel intimidated by the fact that you are saying you don't want me here. Therefore, you'll run afoul of these laws. Okay, so they've got migration amendments in it. So you're going to bring it up. Are you able to read it, please?
Hold on, I don't think that's it. Hold on. They've mentioned this a lot.
Yeah.
Migration amendments. A person who has an association for the purposes of subsections with an organisation if person meet... No, I don't think that's what we want.
Now, here's the other thing about this, which is absolutely draconian. It literally says, because Pauline Hanson's been posting about this, it literally says that no due process needs to be followed. So all of the power to decide what governs hate speech or runs afoul of these laws is given to the direct minister. So essentially what it means is this: if you say something which someone deems as running afoul with these laws, it's the minister's decision to potentially imprison you, until you get your moment in court to actually provide the context around why you said the thing that you said. So it's literally you are guilty up front, and then you have to prove your innocence after the fact in a court of law. So, can anyone else see the irony of the fact that these speech laws are brought in and are all centered around fear and intimidation? I got to tell you, as someone who runs a podcast who speaks about things that run afoul with the government, I am fearful and I'm intimidated by these laws.
Yeah,
because not only,
absolutely, yeah.
And the thing is, not only does it have a chilling effect on the way we run the podcast moving forward, but they're retrospective. So anyone could go back through our last 5 years of catalogue and find something that runs afoul with these laws and potentially look at putting us in prison. Now, what do you think is more intimidating than, like, I'm a father of 2 children. Imagine someone from the government, the minister, saying, hey, that thing you said during COVID 3 years ago, that intimidated people, we're taking you away from your children and putting you in jail. I don't have money to get big shot lawyers to get myself out of prison. Now, you may have seen too that the National Socialist Network literally just disbanded. Did you see that?
Oh, I saw a quick note about it. Can you explain what happened?
Okay, so literally after this exposure draft was dropped, the National Socialist Network, which are the Nazis, they immediately put out a press release to all their members saying, we are immediately disbanding because there's absolutely no way for us to continue doing what we are doing without being arrested. Immediately disbanded. Now... yeah,
that's a coward's way to do it.
Well, honestly...
this hasn't gone through yet.
Yeah, so put your tinfoil hat on. How much did we talk about those guys playing cosplay for years when they started bringing in all these anti-Semitism laws?
Yeah, this kind of cements that, right?
Does it not? Right?
Yeah.
So as soon as they even announce an exposure draft for the most draconian hate speech laws this country has ever seen, the NSN, which the government was essentially saying has spurred this off. Now, don't forget, it wasn't an NSN member that committed the Bondi atrocity.
No.
Right?
It was arguably the opposite of an NSN member.
It was, to be honest, it was people that the NSN said shouldn't be here.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's their words, not mine. Okay? So... It makes you have to ask the question, were these guys just government-funded cosplayers who served their purpose?
Yeah, and now the government gets to say, hey, because of the threat of this law, we've already taken down enemy number 1.
Yeah, so big tick, right? They get a big tick in the box.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's very interesting.
It's honestly, it's a scary thought.
The other thing too, though, I need people to understand, because this conversation I had with my friend... it very much reminded me of the, if a bird's born in a cage, like, you don't know that you're a prisoner.
Yeah, yeah.
And when you have this assumption that these things are here to make you safe, and when you can't explain the function of how it will make you safe, it's okay to realise it's not there for that.
Totally.
And that maybe you've been led up the garden path with it. And most people, this is the problem with this. I think if you ask most people on the street, they'd see no problem with this because they won't think about it in the context of like Jason said, words don't hurt. But the restriction of words hurts. I'll give you a bit of an example. I was listening to, I exposed myself to the left side.
Yep.
I listened to a bit of Josh Zepps, Aussie commentator. Completely wrong on COVID, completely upside down on COVID. But I have to know what him and his people are thinking. And the podcast that they released today just was talking about there was some Adelaide festival. They cancelled a person because they're anti-Israel or pro-Palestine, something, I don't know, didn't even care.
This was the Adelaide Writers Festival, wasn't it?
Yeah. And then, but what I found so interesting, for the next 40 minutes, these two guys spoke about, well, this interpretation of what they said is that, and then, but that could have been perceived as and the whole time I'm thinking, well, that's exactly why speech laws will never work.
Yeah, of course.
Because it's interpretation. it's not based in abject reality.
It's completely subjective. Yeah.
It's completely subjective.
And
so
don't
even
forget,
the two guys that were on the same podcast couldn't agree on what the perceived idea was behind the comments.
Absolutely. And don't forget, our government and bureaucracy has prior form for using word interpretations to censor Australians' political speech. We experienced it during COVID. It was not the government that was ripping posts off of social media. It was members of the government messaging the platform saying, hey, this tweet or this post goes against your own terms and conditions of use on the platform around medical misinformation. Please pull it down. So if you guys think for a second that the same government that already did that stuff in the past is not going to use these brand new shiny powers that they've created for themselves over the bodies of the dead people at Bondi. Like, let's be real here. This does not benefit Jewish people in Australia. 15 Jewish people at Hanukkah are dead because of a terrorist attack that happened because the government and ASIO failed.
Yeah.
These laws do not benefit the Jewish people of Australia. All this does is if a Jewish person comes out and says, hey, I'm concerned about mass immigration from certain countries that hate us as a people, they'll be put in prison. Like, that's the actual result of these laws. And again, okay, this is something too that I think we've discussed before. I don't know if we've talked about on the show, but it might be a bit of a difference in male thinking as opposed to female thinking on certain subjects. But when it comes to, like, look, and I can only comment as a man because that's what I am, right? It's the only thing that I know how to do. So when we look at an offence, so we've spoken about this in regards to, like, that girl in the UK, right? There was that story about the girl in the UK. She was assaulted by a man. She messaged a mutual friend and called that man an F word in those messages. The friend then outed her to the authorities saying that she used hate speech. She was facing more time in prison than the man who physically assaulted her in the first place. Wow. So again, as men, we look at things like violence and we grade them on a scale, right? And so for us, there is no way in a million years that saying any word, I don't care what the words are, but that saying any word could possibly get you more jail time than physically assaulting someone, raping someone, abducting someone, or murdering someone. There is no way in a million years. But we have seen story after story after story over the last 5 years in particular of serious crime that happens, and then people are just thrown back out on the street. And then you hear all the same justifications. Oh, the prisons are full. Or, this person comes from an unprivileged background, therefore we have to show them kindness. Like, we actually take the criminals' feelings into account more than we take the victims in certain states in this country.
I just plugged that bill into AI and asked it. So this was my prompt. Being impartial, can you see any potential problems with this bill? And I'll just read it. This exposure draft raises several significant concerns from civil liberties, legal and practical perspectives. Major concerns. Number one, prohibited hate groups framework. Creates a new category of prescribed organisations based on hate crimes with ministerial discretion and limited parliamentary oversight. Organisations can be banned for past conduct even before the law existed. No conviction required. Minister only needs to have satisfied on reasonable grounds.
Can I make a comment on that before you continue? Yep. Do you know who is a particular group that may fall afoul of these laws retrospectively?
Podcasters.
One Nation.
Oh, yeah,
right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And especially with Pauline just doing her burqa stunt, you don't think that potentially they had One Nation's rise in mind when they drafted these laws?
Although it does say they might be... it could do.
It's at the minister's discretion.
Yeah, and the Liberal will support it too.
Of course, because just like when Tony Abbott put Pauline Hanson in prison back in the 90s on a falsehood, because they were taking too many voters away from the Liberal Party.
So no procedural fairness required in the designation process. Membership becomes criminal even if the organisation wasn't banned when you joined. So that's probably that NSN thing.
Yep.
Migration and character test expansions. Extremely broad grounds for visa refusal or cancellations, including any association with banned groups, defined as merely meeting or communicating. Making statements involves superiority or hatred based on race or ethnicity. Vague risk of... Just going back to... Okay, this is the point that I don't think it has been made enough. Making statements involving superiority or hatred based on race or ethnicity.
Yeah.
Isn't this whole protection racket for minorities exactly that?
Absolutely. It's reverse racism, just like we've seen a million times in the past. Can I make a comment on that too? Because again, the people that you hear spruiking the benefits of mass immigration from certain countries are generally left-leaning people, right? It is a left-leaning, like Chris Minns is the best example of it. New South Wales Premier Chris Minns constantly saying diversity is our strength, even after Bondi happened, constantly saying diversity is our strength. Now, let me throw a scenario at you, Alex. And again, for the government listening, this is a hypothetical scenario. These are not my own thoughts. But we are being told constantly that bringing in people from other nations, such as India, for example, just as an example, improves our country. And that when they get here, we should embrace their cultures fully. We should not be, we're literally being told we should not force these people to assimilate. They should not be forced to give up any of their cultural practice or anything. It is their culture and we should embrace that. So let me put the shoe on the other foot. Let's say that we as Australians decided, you know what? You're right, immigration does improve countries, particularly when you take your culture and you go somewhere else to spread it. So we propose that a few million Australian citizens move to India and we force Indians to embrace Australian culture. The lefties would call it colonialism.
Yeah, totally.
Right?
So,
the hypocrisy is insane. But these laws protect the government from gaslighting you like that, because if you criticise them for it, you'll run afoul of the laws.
Let me keep going.
Yeah.
Migration and character test expansions. Vague risk of harm standard with no clear threshold. Minister not required to determine if membership/association is ongoing and can consider conduct from any time period. Isn't that pretty un-left wing to not give someone a second chance? So if someone was associated and has since left, you could still deny their entry to the country? Okay,
imagine being a comedian. Comedians talk about this all the time, right? The comedians, it's their job to move as close to the line as possible and even step over the line sometimes because it's funny at the time. But the culture changes over time. So I think it was who's the very famous Australian comedian who has done very well in America?
Jim Jeffries?
Jim Jeffries. Jim Jeffries talks about this all the time because they tried to cancel him for a joke he made 10 years ago. And he literally said, it was funny 10 years ago. I don't say the joke today because times have changed, but you can't cancel me over something that I said in the past. These laws literally mean that he could be put in prison for saying things that he said in the past.
So reverse onus on evidentiary issues. Several provisions reverse the burden of proof, requiring defendants to prove defences. Public interest defences have hate symbols now require defendants to establish them. What? Oh, this seems crazy. Fault elements lowered in some offences. Now we're on to firearms. Firearms and background checks allows automated decision-making by computer programs for security assessments, which I don't like. Limited review rights for adverse assessments related to firearm licenses. Spent convictions can be considered by security agencies. Information sharing provisions are very broad. Free speech limitations. New racial vilification offence criminalises speech that would cause a reasonable person to fear harassment and in bold, it says, an extremely low threshold. Public place defined so broadly it includes private land and online spaces. Religious teaching defence is narrow. Aggravated offences for preachers and leaders create status-based criminal liability.
Yep.
Procedural concerns. Many provisions allow ministerial certificates to withhold information from affected persons. Oh, this is great.
Wow.
Limited judicial review in several areas. Extensive secrecy provisions. Parliamentary committee review powers are weak. Number 7, definitional problems. Hate crime definition is circular, includes conduct that would constitute offences that didn't exist at the time. Association defined as single meaning or communication. Risk of harm is undefined. Terms like superiority and hatred lack clear boundaries. Retrospective application. Multiple provisions apply to a conduct occurring before the law commences. Organisations can be banned for historic conduct. Past associations can trigger current consequences. Do you know, would that be so interesting to like use, just to go back and essentially use this as an attack vector to Labor governments that had said, we've got Albanese on camera screaming at Israel.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Can people be offended by that?
And like I said, like this is the sort of thing that if this got through, I would be looking at someone like a Clive Palmer. Like, Clive Palmer loves suing the government. You don't think he's going to sue immediately over the way that he was treated during COVID?
Yeah, but it is a catch-22 though, isn't it? Because so the law shouldn't exist, and then if you use the law to take down your enemies, you've now cemented the laws.
Or it is the best way to show the people who write the laws that it's probably not a good idea to have them around if they can be used on them too.
Yeah. Proportionality issues. 15-year maximum penalties for some new offences. Aggravated offences based on receipt being under 18, even if offender is reckless about age. Penalties seem disproportionate to comparable existing offences, like you mentioned before. Automation and technology. Allows automated criminal intelligence assessments with limited human oversight. Computer programs can make decisions affecting fundamental rights. CEO only required to take reasonable steps to ensure validity. Now, positive aspects. Now, this is much smaller than the negative ones. Addresses genuine concerns about extremism and anti-Semitism, includes some review mechanisms, though limited, attempts to codify international obligations, gun buyback compensation scheme. That's it in positive. Okay, overall assessment. While addressing legitimate security concerns, this bill contains sweeping powers with minimal safeguards that could chill legitimate political speech and religious expression, enable arbitrary execution decision-making, disproportionately affect minority communities, create significant due process concerns, establish dangerous precedents for automated rights-affecting decisions. This bill would...
That's RoboDebt all over again.
This would benefit from substantial revision to include clearer definitions, stronger procedural protections, genuine independent review mechanisms, and sunset clause. Now, I do have a comment on this bill. As was the previous bill, do you think this is I'm sensing that this is the way to do these things now. You write the most extreme, crazy, outlandish bill that no one in their right mind would ever agree to.
Yep.
To then throw it out, let everyone go buck wild over it, to then bring forth the real one, which is what they intended to bring out in the first place, which has all the bits that they really wanted, but it's so much better than we've listened to you, and we've pulled it back.
You shoot for the moon, knowing full well that you're going to end up amongst the stars, but you still get something passed through. Like, the best example of that recently was how they put out the tax on unrealised gains on people's superannuation balances, and everyone freaked out about it. But at the end of the day, they still were able to increase the amount of tax paid on on profits from your superannuation fund. So they still got something out of it.
They gotcha. They got what they. That was even worse, right? Well, no, it's the same thing. Interesting. Okay. I'm only just thinking of this as you're saying it.
Yeah.
They've grabbed onto the public sentiment, which is we need to do something.
Yep.
So it's same as the super rich. Tax the rich. We've got to tax the rich.
Yeah.
Tax the rich was the cause. This is stop hate speech for shooting. Okay?
Yeah.
So let's grab some public sentiment. And now the tactic is let's draft what we actually want. Then let's draft a really extreme offensive version of it. We'll put the offensive version out there first, knowing full well we're going to end up negotiate back to where we were in the first place.
And you know,
and that's why I think this whole thing should be completely rejected. I don't want one element of this bill.
I agree. And do you know?
Like I said to my friend, even in his scenario, or the scenario that I made, where these laws were in place, There's nothing in here that would have stopped those events from happening.
Correct. And if you are correct, because I think that you're on the right track with that play, put out the ridiculous laws, get the public blowback, pair them back to what you really wanted in the first place. The biggest group to keep an eye on if that happens is the coalition and what the coalition does. Because at the moment, the coalition has said that they won't be supporting these laws. So there's another news article I've just brought up here. Give me one sec. So it says, this is from Frank Chung from news.com. 30 a day. Albo's hate speech bill explained as it's branded unsalvageable. Labor's sweeping new hate speech bill could see Australia follow the UK's lead in arresting dozens of people every day over offensive online posts, free speech advocates have warned. Now, I just want to make people remember, the reason why Alex and I were pretty accurate on COVID was not because we're smart, was because we were watching what was happening overseas at countries that were further ahead in the pandemic than we were. So it was very simple to say, hey, all these countries that have had the virus for far longer than we have, they're trying these things are working, these things are not working, so we could quickly ascertain what was the right thing to do and what was the wrong thing to do.
And we also would pick a marker to say, okay, to prove that we're right, if the next thing that comes out is this, which is what they did, then we know that we're on the right track.
Exactly.
And we had,
So we've been talking about the UK for months on this show, because the UK has the record for the most amount of people imprisoned in the last year for tweets and posts online. It was over 12,000 people have been put in jail for posting things online.
I did a zinger today, Jason. I don't know if you watched, what's his name? British Uncensored.
Piers Morgan.
Piers Morgan, and he had Kyle Kalinske on there. For some reason, he's wearing sunglasses. He's bleached his hair and looked like a real cool dude. And I wrote...
The things that I want to say about Kyle Kalinske will run afoul of these new hate speech laws.
I just wrote Andrew Taint.
Nice. I like it. Let me continue on this for a little bit. So the Combating Anti-Semitism, Hate and Extremism Bill 2026, unveiled by Prime Minister Anthony Albanese on Monday in response to the Bondi terror attack, proposes a raft of changes to security, migration and speech laws. Mr Albanese has recalled Parliament ahead of a vote on passage of the new laws on Tuesday as Labor faces an uphill battle after the Coalition and the Greens both declared they would not back the unsalvageable bill on Thursday. Now, I find the Greens' perspective on this very interesting, because you would think the group that would be most keen on this would be the Greens, because they hate freedom of speech, because they want to have all the protections under the law that they can possibly get for all the various minorities.
There's no fines for billionaires in this bill. That's what they...
Now let's just read this next bit. The Free Speech Union of Australia, FSU, a non-profit lobby group, said the most concerning aspect of the bill was the creation of a new racial vilification offence, in quotes. This is an extended copycat version of provisions in the UK that are being used basically to arrest 30 people a day for social media posts. The UK provisions are a lot less severe than this one. In the UK, the speech actually has to be likely to incite racial hatred. In this case, all it has to do is cause someone to fear harassment, which is a very low test. It doesn't even have to cause racial hatred. There's no defence if you didn't intend to disseminate the offending material. Custody data obtained by The Times last year found UK police were making about 12,000 arrests a year over offensive posts on social media. So think about that, 12,000 a year in the UK, but our laws are going to be more strict than theirs. So yes, we have a smaller population, but proportionally, you would think per capita would be 2 to 3 times more arrests.
But also, they're fucking words, dude.
Yeah, they're words.
It's for words.
And this is the thing that we keep coming back to, is we've already got existing laws that weren't enforced, that could have stopped the Bondi terror attack in the first place. We've already got people who are being victims of serious crime in this country and just watching their offenders walking back out on the street again. But this is how you know, unfortunately, this isn't about protecting the victims of Bondi. This is about installing draconian laws that can be selectively enforced at the discretion of the minister in government at the time to stifle political dissent. That's all this comes down to.
Now, for anyone that hasn't seen it, if you go back to episode 281, we explained why we think Bondi happened.
Yeah.
And what was interesting is that not even they're not even on the right track in addressing anything close to this problem.
Yeah.
Like maybe the gun laws, maybe you could say that if the dad got on, if they flagged the dad when he came back from the ISIS training camp and matched up that he's got a gun license, maybe that could have done something. Maybe. But it doesn't say that.
No.
In the bill. It doesn't talk about that.
And the thing is too, like, the thing that really became apparent for me after Bondi was I knew there were guns in this country. I had no idea how many guns were actually in Australia already. There are millions and millions and millions of guns in this country, and yet we have extremely low levels of gun-related violence. Therefore, it's not the guns that are the problem. So why are we targeting innocent, law-abiding gun owners over the actions of two people? And this is
now why are we restricting everyone that's got a face?
Well, yeah. Okay, so this is one of the irony things that, like, someone made this post. And I'm sure they'll go to prison for it. So again, this is their post, not my words, government. But they made the point where they're like, when it comes to the Bondi terrorist attack, this was two Islamic extremists carrying out a terror attack who murdered 15 people, and the government's saying we cannot punish, like, we can't do collective punishment. You cannot collectively punish every Islamic person in this country for the actions of two people. And I absolutely agree with that. I know many peaceful, law-abiding, Islamic believing citizens. I know heaps of them. I've got a lot of Muslim friends. But on the same token, they are punishing all the law-abiding firearms owners over the actions of two people who broke the law.
Yeah.
So you can't have it both ways. But again, when you analyse this, the way that these laws are being drafted, the main beneficiary of these laws is the government. We talk about it all the time. So you've got two things. You're removing people's right to speak about things that are affecting their lives, which could obviously speak directly against government policy. And how many times have people spoken about the fact that when you remove guns from the population is no longer able to defend itself? So we always spoke about this during COVID, right? It was really interesting watching the United States during COVID, because it was all the blue states with all of the strictest gun laws that went full on draconian with the COVID procedures, just like we did in Australia. And it was the red states like Florida and Texas, for example, where essentially it was just business as usual, and they just had normal lives throughout that period. And guess what? Both the red states and the blue states essentially had the same outcomes from COVID, but they handled it in completely different ways. And the reason why the red states handled it in the way they did is because they have a well-armed population, citizenry, that can actually protect itself from the government, whereas the blue states don't, and we don't here in Australia either. And again, we've just seen how many guns are actually in Australia, and we have an extremely low level of gun-related crime. And yet our government is moving to further disarm legal, law-abiding gun owners.
But it's not even disarming, it's dismouthing.
Yeah.
Like, it's just...
Well, the pen is more powerful than the sword, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just trying to clamp down on dissent.
Because think about all the things that people have been criticising the Albanese government for years. Literally, speech-related issues, immigration-related issues. And again, immigration is one of those subjects. It's really difficult to have a real discussion about it. Because, it's that whole thing of, like, don't tar everyone by the same brush. Hey, immigrants from certain regions have cultures that don't really align with Australian values. I don't understand why a leftist Australian Labor government would be so supportive of importing people from cultures that don't actually believe in things like women's rights and LGBTQ rights. It doesn't make any sense. But even just questioning that could run afoul of these laws. So in Australia, we have representative democracy. We are supposed to elect MPs to represent the will of the people. How can the people explain their will to the MPs when they're fearful of going to prison? Democracy is dead if these laws come in. It is absolutely dead. when the government gets to decide by the discretion of a minister at the time what it is you're allowed to say, and what, if you say it, they'll put you in prison, there is no democracy. Democracy's dead. And again, we talk about drip feeding all the time. We mentioned drip feeding a year ago when they brought in the anti-Semitism laws. We said it wouldn't end there. We were right again. Yeah. So even if they bring these laws through, which are the most draconian in Australia's history, do you think it's going to stop there?
We predicted this. So we said this in the episode that when we were covering it. We were like, we bet that the fix will be speech-related and gun-related.
Yep. I said it to my wife the night it happened. We saw it on the news, on TV. We saw the harrowing footage. And I said to my wife, the saddest thing about this is I guarantee you the response to it is going to be more gun control and more speech laws. I should not be able to predict something so cynical with such accuracy immediately, but I did. Because unfortunately, this is all politics. And okay, let's talk about the fact that, so remember, Albanese originally didn't want to have a royal commission. He wanted to do this independent inquiry review, which was going to investigate themselves and find that there was nothing wrong, right? But because of people pressure, he's now been pressured into doing a royal commission. Why are we rushing through these laws before we've even had the results of the royal commission to tell us how it happened in the first place and make recommendations as to what we should be doing to minimise the chances it happens again? But we're just going to rush this thing through beforehand. It just makes no sense. This isn't how you govern a country. If you ran a company like this, you'd have been bankrupt decades ago. It's just not how you do things.
Yeah, I mean, we nothing. This fixes nothing. This achieves nothing. This only hurts us. My prediction is that we aren't going to, this will not be the way that the bill.
Yeah, I agree. And you know what's going to be interesting too? When we're putting our tinfoil hats on and discussing all these different topics, I agree with you. I think that this bill in its draft exposure form is the shooting for the moon. I think they've already pre-written the landing amongst the stars bill that they're going to end up on. I think that because we've got the Labor-Liberal duopoly, like I said, it will be the coalition you have to keep an eye on to see if they support the next iteration of this bill, the watered-down version, because that just goes to show you that Liberal and Labor are both trying to ram this stuff through. And I do believe a lot of this is directly targeted at One Nation. Because the minister will just be able to say, no, One Nation is a racist organisation, therefore anyone who's associated with One Nation, we can put in prison. It's at the minister's discretion, right? So I think that will happen. This will be something telling, though.
But isn't it very, the minister is now in charge of
law?
We don't really have that in any other function, do we?
No. Well, I mean, you're supposed to have an independent justice system, right?
Yeah.
The police are. Look, we saw this with Friendly Geordies when he was going after John Barilaro, right? John Barilaro, ex Deputy Premier of New South Wales, essentially used the counter-terrorism task force as his own personal Gestapo to target Jordan Shanks. It's Jordan Shanks, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, Friendly Geordies for exposing his corruption, his political corruption. That's not supposed to happen. Now, John Barilaro, under these laws, wouldn't have even had to use this dodgy practice. He could literally just tell the police, no, that person's run afoul, go and put him in prison. And someone like a Jordan Shanks would absolutely be a target of these laws because he is a political commentator and he often talks about things which the government is doing wrong, even though we know he's a bit of a Labor shill and he loves the left. But, you also have to... Everyone forgets so quickly. The tides will turn. The tides will change. And whichever laws you hand over to a government today will also still be in place from tomorrow's government. So when... I can tell you right now, if these laws can't come through, and if they start putting people in prison over tweets, you will see the biggest shift to the right in this country's history.
Yeah,
because the people will reject this. And they will vote...
Actually, no, I don't think people are going to care enough about this.
I think when it's things like boomers, for example, who don't understand online safety, who post things which may be seen as racist or whatever, and runs afoul of this, and they start putting those people in prison, I think you'll start seeing a lot more of a shift to the right.
Can you do me a favour? I'm trying to get onto Polymarket.
Right.
And it's not even showing up on my Brave search.
Really?
And
like
I
the
think
website
it's
itself?
been blocked. Yeah.
That's interesting. I'll Brave search it right now from my phone.
Yeah, I'll be interested. The Australian, I've just searched. ACMA has classified Polymarket as a legal online gambling service under the Interactive Gambling Act and instructed the internet service providers to block access to the platform after finding it operated without a license and targeted Australian users, including through social media promotions during the federal election. Polymarket is now among nearly 1,300 websites blocked in Australia for illegal gambling activities.
Wow.
While the platform uses geo-blocking to restrict users in certain countries, Australia users can still access via VPN, though this is not recommended due to legal and regulatory risk. The ban remains in effect as of January 26th. They must have just done it.
Wow.
But isn't that interesting? Because we've used it as a resource to find what we think instead of using a polling company, Polymarket has a way better hit rate.
Yeah.
And now we don't have access to it.
And also we use it for world events. We don't just use it for Australian events.
Yeah.
And now you're not even going to be able to access it for that. Because like we've spoken, I mean, we talk about it every federal election. If you want to find out who's going to win an election, go to Sportsbet. Like, go to the bookies. Go to the people who've actually got money behind it and have some actual skin in the game, because polls tell you nothing. So now this massive resource that we would normally use has been removed from us.
Yeah, I've just had to use a VPN to get on it. Interesting.
That's very interesting.
I want to search for Australian poll.
You know what's wild? I've just gone onto Sportsbet to look at the favourite for the next federal election.
Yep.
Which is, it's saying Friday, 5th of May, 2028. Labor is $1.40 favourites. Liberal or Nationals at $3.20. Any other results at $21. And the Labor leadership, Jim Chalmers, is a favourite at $1.40.
Interesting.
Andrew Hastie is the current favourite of the Liberal leadership at $1.50. And
he's not even in it.
Suzanne Ley, yeah, he's still in the Liberal Party.
I thought he's.
He just got rid of the portfolio for immigration because he was told that he wasn't allowed to actually do anything with it. But what is interesting is Suzanne Ley's not even on the list. So you know she's going. So we've been saying this for ages, right? So when you read the tea leaves, Andrew Hastie is going to be parachuted into the leadership of the Liberal Party just before the next election. So they're going to let Suzanne Ley fumble the way through this. And this is what concerns me about this particular bill, because I think she's just being told, hey, you get the top job for a little bit, you get the status that you had that job, you get paid extra money, that'll go towards her retirement pension and everything like that. But we need to use you to help Labor get these new laws through, and then you're going to be ousted anyway, and Andrew Hastie is going to become the new head. But we've been saying it for months, and what's interesting about Hastie is he has been very publicly going against a lot of what the Liberal Party has been saying.
Labor Light, you mean?
Yeah, but for example, I think Suzanne Ley said that they were going to be creating their own draft of these anti-Semitism laws. And Andrew Hastie put a post out, I think it was yesterday or the day before, literally saying that he thinks it's an affront to people's rights and he won't be supporting it in any way, shape or form. So I find it interesting that the Liberal Party is allowing Andrew Hastie to come out and essentially be using One Nation talking points, because I believe the play is going to be use Suzanne Ley to help get watered down versions of these laws through, wait a few months, and then you parachute Hastie in, and then Hastie goes on a full right-wing marketing mission in an attempt to bring One Nation voters back to the coalition before the next election.
Yeah, and they'll pitch the whole. Well, then One Nation's never got to get in. We're in this two-party preferred thing. So if you like them, use us. And it won't be anything to do with the coalition winning the election. It'll be everything to do with Labor winning the election. Yeah, dude, it's scary to think that if Labor goes in again, and I can see it. You know, I live in Brisbane, and as much as, we've spoken about on the show, where I have had some conversations with some of the young people that did vote for him that were very disappointed in the outcome.
Yep.
Unfortunately, because Liberals are so weak, I joked to someone, I don't know if you listened to Unemployable with Jared Rennick.
Yeah, that was a really good show.
Yeah, well, those guys were not smart enough. They really need that Adam there.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. But they were asking him, which was a good question, is why aren't the right-wing parties forming their own coalition?
Yep.
And you've said it, and you've identified this in the past, that right-wingers are more individual and they have principles and values, and therefore they're not really going to yield on those principles and values because they don't believe in them. They truly don't believe in them.
It's freedom versus collectivism.
Dude, I could see a world, if One Nation did get, maybe it's not this cycle, but it could be the one after, if the trend keeps continuing and they do become one of the major parties, I could see the Liberals and Labor creating a coalition.
Wow.
And if you think about policy, right?
Yeah, that's a really interesting point.
And they then become like and that's all they're in it for, right? They just want power.
In which case, you would hope that the Liberals and Nationals coalition would disintegrate and the Nationals would go into whatever the right-wing conservative coalition
One Nation.
is. Yeah, that's a really interesting point. But you know what's terrifying for me, right? So, to me, these speech laws, and like you said, it's scary to think that Labor is such a red-hot favourite to win the next election when we see just how poorly they've been running the country. And just goes to show you that, again, it's been the story throughout time. Australia is the lucky country. We are a very safe, very prosperous nation. Even though times are tough now, it's still way better to live here than in countries all over the world. So it will have to get so much worse than it is now before enough people actually wake up and start paying attention. And what scares me about these speech laws is I think that the powers that be in the duopoly, as in Liberal Labor duopoly, they see that the world is changing. And this is what I'm talking about. Number one, look at the amount of progress that Donald Trump has made in making America great again in 12 months. Look at the amount of progress that Javier Milei has made in making Argentina great again in 12 months.
Quick note on that.
Yep.
Just so people were bagging. It was so funny because I'm a Milei fan, right? Libertarian.
Yep.
I'm a libertarian. I think he's going to do some really good things. And then when they gave him that credit swap, America gave him a $20 billion credit swap.
Yep.
My mates were like, "Oh, look at you, mate, having to get bailed out." And I was like, actually, it's a credit swap. It's not a bailout. Anyway, they only used like $2.5 million of the money, and they just paid it back. Or billion, sorry, $2.5 billion, and they just paid it back in full, the whole thing in full. And they got it was used for a function. America won because they got their money back plus interest.
Yep.
Javier used it to balance his currency, and it shows that it can be done.
That's right.
And it was like, but when I've sent it back to the boys, they haven't said anything.
yeah, of course I haven't. So here's the thing, right? So you're seeing these good stories about right-wing governance all over the world. Look at Poland. We always talk about how Poland is being fined €1 million a day because it's not letting any refugees into Poland. And we talk about how it's the safest country in Europe. And the level of, like, rapes, for example, are extremely low compared to other countries in Europe that have allowed all the refugees in. The next thing that's going to happen is Nigel Farage's Reform Party will win the next federal election in the UK. That's the next
if they allow an election to happen.
If they allow an election to happen, right? So that'll be the next big thing that happens. And all the bookies are saying that they are a massive favourite to win in a landslide. So when Farage wins, and this has nothing to do with Farage being amazing, the majority of the policies that these right-wing populist parties have brought into place are just straight common sense. It's just common sense stuff. You don't have to be a genius to do it, right? So the UK will probably go to Reform. And then Reform, within 12 months of just doing common sense, will probably greatly improve. And then meanwhile, our election looks like it's due for 2028. So we're 2 years away from our next election. I believe that a lot of these laws are designed to be able to police the public square of information in the lead up to those elections so that you won't be able to see how well these other right-wing countries are going.
Yeah, totally.
Right? And this to me is COVID all over again. because everyone will fall for it. Because remember, during COVID, they censored anyone who was anti-vax, told you that the vaccine didn't stop transmission, told you that there was adverse events to the vaccines, tried to tell you that, hey, Uttar Pradesh in India used ivermectin and zinc and doxycycline and a whole range of other medications and essentially eradicated COVID within a few months. Like, all of this really good positive information was censored. So there are people still today on the 16th of January 2026 who have no idea that any of that stuff ever even happened. They have no idea. Yep. And we have this unique perspective into this because we got censored. That Uttar Pradesh video was banned off YouTube. It was deleted. It was called Get This India. I think it was episode 74 off the top of my head. You'll still be able to find it on audio downloads if you're on an audio platform. But that was banned off YouTube. So there will be people still today who have no idea that any of this stuff happened, and they will still think that the government did the right thing during COVID. So when these laws come in and they stop you from speaking about the very issues that are being spoken about in these other countries. So in America, what did Trump do on day one? He closed the border. Mm-hmm. And he did it immediately, to great effect. In the UK, what are they talking about all the time? The mass immigration of people on small boats coming over from France and how they need to stop that. And I guarantee you, Reform, if they get in, they will stop those boats because it's absolutely possible to do. You cannot pretend it's not possible to do. We do it in Australia already.
I actually saw a very interesting podcast about why the technical reason why they can't stop the boats.
Oh, yeah?
It's because they signed up to an international human rights law.
Yeah, which means that Reform will remove them from that. Just like Trump pulled out of the World Health Organization.
Yeah,
right?
Just pull out of it.
And this is the thing, guys. This is what you are seeing. This is the fight back from the globalists. So Trump took over America, showed people that a right-wing way of doing things can be better, and has immediately withdrawn either completely or just funding from a lot of these globalist entities like the World Health Organization, like the World Economic Forum, like the United Nations, right? The globalists who use those organizations to essentially profit from every country that is a member of those are now fighting back. These speech laws are intended to stop citizens from being able to hear the truth about there is a different way to do things. And again, every single thing that we get rammed down our throats is through the same playbook. Won't somebody think of the children?
Yeah.
It's all emotive calls to action. We must do something. Therefore, we're going to take all of your rights away and threaten to put you in prison if you say the wrong thing. Oh, and just a happy side effect of that will be that you won't be able to criticize any of our policies which are negatively affecting you.
Yeah. It's the freedom for safety. The freedom for safety.
Yeah.
And we're just falling for it time and time and time again. No one's. You know, I had a friend of mine say the other day, because we talked about COVID, and he did the absolutely allowable excuse of, I just had to do what was right by my family.
Yep. And
that's not the real fight. Like, that's no one's going to criticize you for that, but you should be criticized for it.
Yeah. You know,
because that's the game. They built that. They have built that. Yeah. Make yourself resilient.
And like I said, I can guarantee you, if these laws came through, I would be pursuing legal options to potentially sue the former government over the intimidation they gave to anti-vaxxers during COVID. They absolutely intimidated, harassed, coerced.
Yeah, especially there's no time. Yeah, maybe
there's no time limit.
AFL solicitors, maybe.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, he'd be the right guy to talk to, for sure. But, absolutely, there will be avenues through these laws. But again, it just goes to show you, the fact that I can even find these avenues up front means it will be weaponized. It'll be weaponized against anyone that the government doesn't like. And the problem is, all the discretion comes down to the government minister. Doesn't go through the police. There is no procedural fairness required. It all comes down to the minister. So I guarantee, if I brought that case forward, the minister would say, no. That doesn't pass.
I had another story, but we don't have time to do it now. But I'll tell you what it is, and if you want it next week, you can have it. Maybe comment.
I've got time this afternoon if you want to keep going.
I don't.
Okay, that's cool.
But I did a bit of an investigation myself, basically talking about laws that come in and whether the laws are doing more, like net more or less damage than
the justification?
Than the justification for it. So I did a bit of research into Austrac, but we'll do it for another time.
Yeah, okay, cool. That can be a little, what's it called? Appetizer for next week.
Honey dick.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate you having you here for as long as we have you here. If you haven't done so already, it would be a really good idea to at least subscribe to the podcast on an audio platform. I do believe that once these laws come through, we are again going to see pressure from our government placed on platforms like YouTube and Rumble, and particularly X as well, to remove content they say runs afoul of their laws. An RSS feed, which is what an audio podcast runs through, is way more difficult to police. So you'll be able to get a new podcast app. You go to newpodcastapps.com. You can download Podcast Guru or any of these Podcasting 2.0 apps, and you'll still be able to find our podcast if, for example, if the worst case happens that they remove us from all these platforms again. But we really appreciate you having you here.
We'll keep saying it. We'll keep saying it.
Absolutely.
They're just words, guys. They're just words.
And I would say go and follow Oz vs. The Agenda if you are interested in this issue, because his reporting on it has been absolutely top-notch. He'll give you updates, and if one of your local MPs, for any of you listening, if your local MP is saying they're going to be supporting this, please write to them, call their officers, make your thoughts heard that as a citizen in a representative democracy, you are not okay with them approving these laws that take our rights away. And on that note, thanks for joining us, guys. We'll see you all next week.
See ya.